It's time to share secrets and insights from fellow entrepreneurs. If you're looking to grow or start a business and you're a game changer, then keep listening to Avanti Entrepreneur for great advice from your host, Dave Mammano, America's entrepreneur coach.
Hey, Avanti Tribe, Dave Mammano here. Just want to thank our sponsor, Paychex. You know, Paychex, they make it simple for businesses of all sizes to pay and manage their team. They make payroll easy with employee pay options, including direct deposit, checks, pay cards, and so much more. Founded over 4 decades ago to relieve the complexity of running a business so that the owners can focus on what matters most. Above all else, and more than any other company, Paychex makes it simple. Visit AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Go to our partner link and check them out. They're offering you a free month of payroll just for giving them a shot as an Avanti Tribe member. Give them a shot, folks. They really help this podcast to be possible. Really appreciate Paychex. Now, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Dave Mammano, your host, and we are here to help achievers and business owners and leaders move forward. That's what Avanti means, move forward, so that we can help you reach your potential. I do this by interviewing just massive rock stars, people that I have met, at least on the phone, and I just think they're just incredible people that inspire me and that will inspire our listeners. And today I have on the show somebody that we talked on the phone and we made each other's day just on the phone. So I can't wait to meet her someday. Her name is Mary Shores. Mary, welcome to the show.
Hello, Dave. My absolute pleasure to be here today. I could not be more excited.
Well, we had a great connection when I just called you, I emailed you and randomly to see if you'd be on my podcast because I researched you a little bit. I thought you'd be a great fit. I heard you on another podcast. And I said Mary would be perfect for the Avanti listeners. We had a great call. I think it's safe to say that we were both just full of great energy throughout the day. So I am really excited for this interview.
Yeah, me as well.
Yeah, and you've got so many great things going on. I mean, we could probably do one of those podcasts that lasts like 4 or 5 hours. I try to keep them for 30 minutes, so we might have to do a part 2. But we'll dig into as much as we can to really help our listeners with what you bring to the world. So I'm going to get your bio, and then we'll start digging in. So Mary Shores, 20 years ago, Mary Shores started with an idea. Today, she is a successful entrepreneur with a multi-million-dollar, heart-centered business and a best-selling book, Conscious Communications. But she didn't start that way. Mary hit rock bottom after enduring the loss of her daughter and surviving an unstable past filled with abandonment, but found within herself the strength to rebuild by founding an industry-changing business. She now inspires others with lessons of resiliency and empowerment nationwide. So that, right there, short but incredibly impactful. My heart is beating just reading it, and I lead with my heart too. So I'm glad I have a kindred spirit in you, Mary. So Mary, would love, when we got on the phone, I just asked you about your journey. I think that led to about an hour phone call. And, if you want to expand on the bio and just tell me how did this journey get started for you?
Well, I don't know if you believe, one of the things that I believe, or one of the things that I say, maybe I don't even understand the deeper meaning of it, but to say that things happen for you, not to you.
Yep.
And so I say those words, it's kind of a quote, but to really live it and mean it and go back and trace those steps, because you hear that bio and it's filled with tragedy and success at the same time. And I think that, experiencing both of those levels of extreme have led me to understand some things in an extremely exceptional way. And one of those things that I understand is triggers. I understand how people are triggered in their nervous system because I've experienced a lot of trauma. I was actually a total rags to riches story out on my own at 16, had very little guidance, absolutely no resources whatsoever. And, still had to manage my way through being a senior in high school and ended up a teenage mother who lost her child due to a very serious brain injury that happened as a result of lack of oxygen at birth. Now, this sort of led me in the direction, this was back in 1992, but led me in a direction of really studying the brain. And that began my love of neuroscience. I was telling you before we started that I was listening to one of your other episodes, and I was so thrilled that she was calling herself a nerd, because a science nerd, because I'm the same way. I call myself a neuro nerd.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but just understanding the mind, understanding behaviors, understanding how we make connections with other people has truly just become like my life's passion. I mean, because you can really, it just all boils down to how we create those connections. And so it's like, that's a great thing to study for personal development, but where people really get that sort of, that spark of like, what did she just say? It's when I say this, that I own a debt collection agency. So this business that I started at the age of just 24 years old was in a very unlikely place of debt collections.
So how did that come to be? Like, okay, so you just talked about your journey, and so it sounds like it was kind of a hard scrabble life as you were, teenager. So you said you were on your own at an early age, and obviously, very sorry, but you had a very bad tragedy, and so, I mean, very devastating for anybody. But then you end up starting a business, which is, somehow you made everything into something, like, I'm going to get back on my feet, do something positive, take my life in my own hands. But how did you end up starting a debt collection company of all companies, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was because I love debt so much, Dave.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
just the concept of debt is like.
Such a relaxing word, such a calming word, right?
So I'll tell you what it was. It was when I was 13, my parents owned a debt collection agency, which in my mind meant that I know everything about debt collections.
Right.
And when several years later, my parents got through a divorce, and we could do a whole show about how I actually got started. But the short version is
that's a memoir, a book coming out someday about this.
It would be like the craziest the craziest entrepreneurial story you ever heard. Like, I would literally enter a contest with this story. I mean, I was breaking into a building, it's crazy stuff that happened back in those days. But the short version is that my mother was divorced by this point. She had been running the company alone for several years, really ran it into the ground, had several financial issues. And I had formed a relationship with enough of the clients when I was younger that I was able to reach out to them and say, hey, would you give me a shot at this? And enough of them said yes, like maybe 10, not a lot, but enough of them said yes, that I was able to get a little start. And so the reason I chose that industry is not because I grew up wanting to be in the debt collections business. I actually have not met one person who says, I want to grow up and be a debt collector. But when I was a little girl, I definitely wanted to be a businesswoman. And, I remember when all the other little girls were playing house, I was actually in my garage playing bank. And that it was really fun, actually. So all the other kids in the neighborhood that were playing house, they had to go through my bank on their like tricycles and bicycles and things so that they could have money to buy their groceries for house or whatever they were doing.
That before. I mean, lemonade stands, washing cars, right? A bank. I love it.
I had a bank in my garage. It was fake money, though. It was not real money. But now I wish I could go back and actually do it with real money.
Even nickels,
oh my
right?
Gosh.
Dimes, right?
Even nickels, yeah.
Yeah,
little whatever. So, it was just, I wanted to have a business, and I wanted to be a businesswoman. I really felt strongly pulled to that. And I think that there was just a moment where I saw an opportunity and I jumped at it. And I think that that's a really great lesson for any entrepreneur, is because a lot of times your biggest opportunity comes out of not the best circumstances.
Sure.
Like finding a business I've bought 3 other businesses since that time, all in similar circumstances. And you can go in, you can get a great deal on a business. You can bring your own policies and procedures in, build it up, to something great, add it to your own portfolio, whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the bottom line is I saw an opportunity and I jumped at it. But you know what? Right away, I recognize that there was a negative stigma, still is today, a negative stigma to the debt collections industry. And it is rightfully earned because of the abuses that take place. It's the methods that are employed by the collection agencies themselves in the way that they dehumanize the person who they are collecting from. And somewhere we have lost sight, and this is not just about debt collections, but in our country, we have lost sight that, and we've created a perception that debt is a bad thing. And I mean, we even use the term bad debt, like you're bad. And so right away, I wanted to do something different. And so I decided that I would use a sales approach to collections. And most of the time when I say that to people, they're like, oh, that's really great. But it failed. And it failed for a couple of reasons. One reason it failed is because we are wired towards something called negativity bias. Now, negativity bias means that we are going to have a stronger reaction to negative stimuli than we do to positive stimuli. So simply put, you get more pain if you lose $100 than you get pleasure if you find $100.
Yeah.
Right? So because we have this stronger reaction to negative stimuli, my competition was beating me out every time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this actually led me to my aha moment in life when one day I looked at the phone. I'll never forget this. I literally said out loud, I want the next person who calls to be happier at the end of the call than they were at the beginning. And I changed the entire goals. I went to my collectors. I said, your job is no longer to collect money. It is only to make the person happy.
Wow.
Now, the result, I had no idea where this was going at the time, but the result was something incredible that developed into a lifetime of passionate work for me, which is what I call the communication code. And so what I stumbled upon is that the real issue when it comes to debt is the shame and the unworthiness that people feel just by having a debt. And my research shows that if someone has a debt, they're less likely to apply for the same jobs. They're less likely to apply for a mortgage on a home. They're even less likely to date the same caliber of person because on the inside, they feel so unworthy. This is not just about debt, but there's lots of things that cause a swirling feeling of unworthiness inside of our subconscious mind. And so once I learned what these triggers are, I was able to create a communication strategy that really triggered the person's parasympathetic. In other words, trigger their feel-good centers of their brain in order to create a deep, long-lasting connection.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were being very unconventional, right? I think it was really, first of all, it's sweet and sensitive and empathetic of you and compassionate. But from a business perspective, it was brilliant because no one else is really doing this, right? I mean, it's kind of like we're going to pound them on the head because we know they feel like crap, and we're going to continue to pound them on the head until they pay. But you're humanizing the process, right? You're saying, hey, I don't know exactly what you say, but it sounds like it goes something like, we all messed up. It sounds like, you've gone down a path, obviously not intentional. We're here to help you get out of it. Like, am I assuming that you kind of want to be their friend and their partner in the process of rebuilding not only their credit, but their self-worth, their self-esteem, and just feeling like a proud human again? So are you coming out and saying like, we want to help you with that process instead of being like, give us the money, darn it?
Well, I would say that the system is based on neurology, psychology, and neurochemistry. I think that psychology is something that we're all very familiar with, but neurology and neurochemistry are a little bit not as familiar. So neurochemistry or neurology, to me, it's like really studying the behaviors and the pathways of the subconscious mind, or AKA like our neural pathways. Stimuli A happens and the person is always going to go A, B, C as a result. They're going to always respond a certain way.
Yeah.
And so one of the first things that I learned was how people really have these freak out moments. I really call it that, freaking out, when they hear a negative word. So if you think to yourself, like, think back to the last time that you called the airlines or the cable company or the cell phone company, and how aggravating it is as soon as they start saying things like, no, I'm sorry, unfortunately, we can't, our policy is blah, 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 blah. Bottom line is you're not going to get your needs met.
Right.
And when we know, or when we are triggered that we're not going to get our basic human needs met, we tend to react out of fight or flight, which is, that sort of, we can become aggressive, irritable, aggravated over the situation. And so the first thing that I actually did was eliminate all of those negative words. So we have a do not say list. It's one of my biggest secrets to success. And the words on the do not say list are no, not, can't, won't, however, and unfortunately.
Wow. Good for you. And it's probably tough for them at first, right?
It is very, it's difficult to learn initially because it goes against the way we're conditioned to communicate. We're conditioned since birth to communicate a certain way. And the strategy that I'm taking people through actually goes a little bit against that human conditioning that we've had. And so once you learn it, you'll never communicate another way, because there's nothing that is going to build a deeper connection with another human being than communicating in the way that I teach. And so, by eliminating those negative words, I mean, we all know the power of self-talk. We all know, and we were just like in our little pre-interview chat, we were talking about your daughter, and I was telling you about like when I was younger and how we're just so critical of our looks as a young woman. And we don't see how beautiful we are because we're constantly like telling ourselves how ugly. So we know how damaging that self-talk is, but it's just as damaging because the body doesn't really know the difference. The brain, the nervous system, it doesn't know the difference of where this negative stimuli is coming from.
Yeah.
And so when you're on the phone and this company is telling you basically they're not going to do squat for you, you just get angry and the damage is already done.
Yep.
Because the nervous system's already triggered.
Yep. And it's just deeper wounds, making the wounds even deeper, right? Yeah.
Yes. And any bad experience you've ever had with a company all kind of comes pouring back, or even a company in the same industry. There's reasons why Harley Davidson is such a great company. I watched the CEO of Harley Davidson give a speech once, and his name is Ken Smith. I don't know if he's still CEO, but he was at the time. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, Harley does not have customers. Harley Davidson has disciples. And I was like, you know what? That's absolutely true.
Yeah. Yeah. People will tattoo the Harley Davidson logo on themselves, right?
That's true.
Yeah, that's definitely when you become a disciple of a company.
And
Yeah.
I think the same way with Apple computers. There's just something that resonates when you can create a connection with somebody that resonates with them on this deep level. It will create a loyalty that is difficult to be broken, even under bad circumstances. Even when your company does screw up, if you have that foundation of loyalty already set in with your clients, your customers, your patients, your coworkers, your friends, your relatives, your significant other, it's that foundation that is the most important.
Yep.
And when that is rock solid, then everything else is just going to be easier and easier and easier.
I love it. You're changing the record, right? You're changing the record as far as they're playing one record in their head, and you're like, you know what? We're going to put a different record on, and they're like, oh, all right. And you're appealing to what is going to make them feel good about themselves instead of like just pounding them down even more, right?
It's so true.
So what did that do to your business? So you implemented this very kind of counterculture idea in the debt collection industry. And I mean, were the results pretty quick that you started doing very well?
I would say yes. So in the first year alone, we had a 34% revenue increase.
Wow.
Now that was like the most obvious thing because it was, the numbers don't lie. The taxes don't lie, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So without a doubt, our revenue went up 34%, but there was a lot of other residual benefits as well. So one of the things that happened was my employees became extremely empowered people. Now, empowerment is something that I love to talk about. Like as a personal development author, put me on a stage, I could give you an empowerment rant all day long. But it's important because it's a buzzword. And buzzwords are fascinating to me because like they mean something, but what do they mean? What do they mean? So to me, empowerment means when from the inside out, you know where it is you're going, at least the first steps of how to get there. And so you feel this inner confidence that exudes through. And I think empowerment is really just that simple. So because my employees had been so thoroughly trained on this communication strategy, guess what? They didn't need to raise their hand anymore and say, come help me with this call, because they actually knew how to do it. And because the consumers themselves were not getting triggered anymore, we were getting less and less and less complaints, which led to less and less and less lawsuits. Because one of the things, actually, the collection industry is the highest litigated industry in the country. More so than more so than medical. We have the highest ranking of people who sue us, not that we're suing them, that they're suing us.
Right.
And so those lawsuits were gone.
Wow.
And
wonders for your stress level, right?
Yes. And
Yeah.
then my employees, their happiness, just because this didn't just change the way they worked, this changed their life.
Yeah.
This literally changed their own neural pathways, because once they learned this process and put it into place, and it's not just about eliminating words, there's 3 rules and there's 3 very specific steps. But once they learned it, they started doing it with their family. They just started living their lives in a different way. And so their lives all got better. And yeah, I mean, it just continues to give back. And then it became the framework of what I used to build out the concepts in the best-selling book, Conscious Communications.
Very nice segue. So you went from a debt collector who started out the traditional, I guess is the way you do it, you hammer over the head, you ask for the money, to having the idea to transform, the way you communicated with people. And I just love the fact that not only did it help your business and the people you're calling on, but what I truly love is that it transformed your team, right? And I would imagine that it became even a recruiting tool. Like, people are talking about how great it is to work at your place, so more people want to work there. I would imagine retention. I would imagine that in your industry overall, retention's got to be pretty low. That's a tough
Correct.
job, right?
It is.
And but I would imagine also that you increase that tremendously for your company because they're enjoying what they do. Is that true?
Yes. And, here's the thing. Debt is a reality. I mean, debt is something that we're all going to deal with. And there is the psychological burden, that comes along with debt. But it's on the creditor side too. If anyone's ever owed you a significant amount of money, whether it was a friend or a client, we all know that feeling of when we can instinctually know that the person's avoiding us or whatever happened, whatever's happening in that relationship, but it does damage the relationship.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, debt is not going away. As long as money exists, debt is also going to exist. But somewhere along the lines, we started making money a higher priority than being human. So bringing humanity back into that process is really what changed things. Not making people feel doomed for the fact that they have a debt, but making them feel inspired and motivated just for the fact that they want to pay the debt. Whatever those terms are going to be for them doesn't even matter, because, it might take one person a year, it might take another person 5 years. That doesn't matter. What matters is the ability to validate what the person's situation is, and to be able to build a bridge to the solution. Because when someone is in that fight or flight system, see, what happens is they cannot be both in fight or flight and in the strategic thinking centers of the brain at the same time. And so my job is to switch them to turn on that solution oriented part of the brain. And then once I've established that through the words that I use, then they're able to hear a solution and actually commit to it. Now, for your audience of entrepreneurs, how would you love to be able to implement a strategy like this for your own clients? To bring in more clients, to use this for sales, to use it in your customer service. Because I can tell you that the majority of how customer service training is going now is completely counterintuitive.
Wow. You definitely are a neuroscience nerd. I'm loving it. So another thing I love about you is just your zest for helping people. So you could have been like, great, I figured this cool thing out that is helping my business grow. I'm making more money. My employees are staying longer. Awesome. I got my mountain and that's it. But you started taking everything that you're learning and just saying like, how can I help people with this? So you writing books, you do a lot of professional speaking. Now you've really started a separate business, right, of helping people that I want to dig into. So how did that all start? When did you realize like, all right, I'm onto something here, and I feel like, who else can I help with this discovery?
Well, so it was actually my brother several years ago. My brother, he was trying to get this client that was a hospital. And so he said to me, he goes, "Oh, I told this hospital that you would go train their staff." And I said, "What? You told them what?" And this was years and years ago. And he goes, "Yeah, just go over there and train them for a few hours." Man. And after I had my own little freak out, panic attack, fight or flight moment, right, I went over there and I trained all their billing, collections, patient account staff. And so it went over so well. It was during the time where the real estate bubble had crashed. Healthcare was really suffering because people were not necessarily accustomed to having to cough up that copayment at the time of service. The representatives did not know how to ask for the money, so they were terrified to have to sit in that chair and tell someone, "Hey, can you pay this, $20 today," or whatever it is. And they really had a need to try to collect some of this money. And so I was able to train them, but more importantly, I was able to teach them how to talk to people with compassion and confidence so that they can build that connection rather than drive a disconnection. Because a lot of times if you go to ask people for money, that can be an immediate disconnect. And the results were amazing. This hospital was able to completely turn around their billing and patient accounts departments, and they still use this to this day. So this was like back in 2007 or 8, I think, and they're still using this today, and they still have me come back for yearly trainings. But that was the very beginning. You asked me how it started. It was really because my brother put me up to it, and I went and did it, and it went over so fabulously that now I actually train on it all over the country, not only in healthcare, but in all kinds of industries. So actually was just in Toronto last week giving a speech at a large conference called Impact Lives.
Wow. So, and how do you phrase that to people? Do you say, I'm going to bring back humanity into debt collecting?
Well, it's not really. So it's interesting because through the lab, I like to call it my lab, but through the lab of my own business, through the lab of my own debt collection agency is how I developed and cultivated, and I used my own lab with my own experiments to perfect it over the years. But the system itself has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with debt collections. It only has to do with reaching people on a deep resonant level so that you're going to always be building a connection. Everything you say, every everything you say, everything you do, every word that comes out of your mouth, every choice you make, and every action you take in the thinnest sliced moments of life is either going to create a deeper connection or it's going to drive a disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about that with communication, like sometimes you're upset, you text something that the person takes the wrong way, that causes a disconnect. And over time of a relationship, it's kind of like checks and balances or deposits in a bank account. Too many disconnecting moments, you lose that relationship. The more connecting moments you can build, you strengthen the relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's really what it boils down to. And I would say, like, more on the personal development side, connection is everything. Understanding even our connection to ourselves it's everything.
Yeah.
And I love, one of the people I study is Brene Brown.
Yep.
Love, love, love her. And one of the things that she says that I love is, rarely does a response make a situation better. What
Wow.
makes a situation better is connection.
Yeah.
That is our greatest power, and it's so
Yeah.
often overlooked.
I love that. And so I'm feeling good right now because I'm told often that I'm a good connector. And I think it's because I just truly love people, and I truly love making people feel good. And I don't know why. I know there's some people that somehow get off on making people feel bad. Like, I hear some things that people say. I'm like, why would you say that? Why would you want to make that person feel that way? I just don't understand it. And for me, I just love people. I'm very curious, and I love to talk about, like, the good things going on with them in their lives, so that I could, hopefully when I leave the room, they feel better about themselves, because that makes me feel good. Maybe it's a little selfish, but I get energy out of helping people find out how they're winning, what they're doing well, talking about that, reminding them about that, so they can get to that next level. That's what life's all about, right? I mean, you look at these books, Think and Grow Rich. You think about psycho-cybernetics. It's all about, and I'll say it again, changing the record in your head so that it's playing positive music, positive words, positive self-talk for yourself. Why is somebody at age 50 worth $100 million and somebody at age 50 is bankrupt? Well, they had different beliefs and self-talk along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they might have had the same exact upbringing, but they're just telling themselves a different story. And then, of course, mix in other people, whether they're saying good things or bad things, and that becomes part of the recipe for success or not. So I want to hear about, so you're doing a lot of teaching, right? This is what your books are about, your programs, you have Facebook groups, you're speaking. So, can you give us some secret sauce about how we can bring ourselves to the next level with good communication?
Yeah, well, I would love to start with something you just said a moment ago, which is dealing with those people that come at people with that sort of intention to bring the other person down.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about, like, some people sort of get off on it, right? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people in the collection industry are that way. I mean, a lot of people actually seek out jobs like this because they know they can be a bully sitting in that seat, right?
Yeah.
So believe it or not, people, even those people who, we'll just call that a certain mindset, okay? Yeah. Maybe it's a negative mindset. Probably the person isn't aware of it,
Yeah.
But no one wakes up out of bed and thinks to themselves, I want to make so-and-so's life miserable today. It's not their intention to walk around and just sort of exude this sort of soul-sucking energy, for lack of, like, you really exude positive energy, like you've got that spark, but there is that other spark that's like, you want to avoid that person, right?
Yeah.
Because that if you're around them, it's going to drain you. Okay, but what if, because I know you like to make people feel better, I'll tell you a really great way to do that, and a way that you can create instant connection with that person. So we all know who the friend is that we're going to call them, and they're just going to immediately start in. Or sometimes people even take it a little further, where they're actually being aggressive and turning the table sort of on you, like pulling you into it. You can say to them, I can really feel how frustrating this is to you. And so that's actually step one in the code, is validation. Because remember, rarely does a response make a situation better. What makes a situation better is connection. And so what our conditioning is, when someone's going on and on and on about their problems, we want to jump in there and start offering solutions, but that really, the person isn't receptive yet to hear the solution, because the human brain, which I'm fascinated with, obviously, you know this by this point, but the human brain, it's like we all have a set of basic human needs. And one of those basic human needs is the need to be heard. And so it's like we have these boxes in our brain, and the moment, in order to be able to move on in a conversation, we need to be able to check the box that we've been heard. So here's the way I see something like this go down. This type of person is coming at you, and you're talking to them, and you say, that must be really, really hard. And I can feel how frustrating that is. When you say you feel something from another person, they don't cognitively understand this, but as humans, it will trigger something that causes them to back off. Believe it or not, if they're really ranting and raving and you say the word feel, it will automatically cause them to back off just a little bit, to slow down, because no one really wants to affect the life of another person in that way.
Right.
Yeah. They say misery loves company, but really we don't want to spread misery. So and remember that rarely does the response make a situation better. What makes it better is a connection. The moment that the person feels heard from you, they check that box in their mind that they felt heard, they instantly create a connection with you, and they become receptive now to the solution.
Yeah.
If you don't hear them, if you don't validate what they've said, the tendency is they're going to now start the story over. They're going to tell you more details. They're going to go even deeper into the problem. And it's going to make you want to back off even more, because you're thinking, oh my goodness, how can I get away from this?
Yeah.
But just one little moment, a few little words to say, that's really hard, or that's really difficult, and my heart goes out to you. It really just changes the entire situation. And I think that in business, we lose sight of doing that. We lose sight. But if we make it a strategy, like I'm always going to validate everything someone says, it really changes everything.
I'm thinking to myself that you sound more like a Nobel Peace Prize winning psychiatrist than a owner of a debt collection company. I can see why you're so successful. I mean, this is incredible, and it's changing the game. I mean, if people come and read your books and come see you, they're definitely walking away with some strategies and things that they could implement and execute to change their game, in their life, their company, their family, their friends. Is that one thing you just said? What a game changer! Because you're right, it is our instinct to try to help and solve the problem, and then you're going deeper and deeper and deeper, right? And maybe they don't want that, right? But now you're making them pause a little bit and say, oh, all right, maybe I'm affecting this person too much. Let me kind of reframe what I'm, not intentionally thinking this, but that's kind of what happens, right? So
just try it once. Next time, just try it once and see what happens. I was on this podcast called Business Breakthroughs a few months ago, and the lady that was interviewing me, her name is Esty Rand. She did the most amazing thing. She surprised me because she had already read my book before I went on the show, and then she said, Mary, I used your strategy on an email and I made $4,000 in one email. And it was actually a client that very same day she was getting ready to fire that client. She called them a vampire client.
Yeah.
And she literally said that they were sucking her blood and she couldn't work with them anymore.
Right.
And so she goes, but wait a second. I was just researching Mary Shores, who says, don't say unfortunately. And the amazing thing that happens is when you eliminate certain words from your vocabulary, it forces your own strategic thinking centers to light up. Yeah. And because now you'll come up with a better idea of how to solve the problem. So like she totally used the code. She wrote this email and it worked. And the guy ended up paying her $4,000 more as she was referring his business to someone else.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
So you can make people money too.
No, I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
A lot of us entrepreneurs are also like, we get our start as small business owners. I don't know anybody who wouldn't love to have a 34% increase in revenue. Now, while I can't promise that, I can promise you that doing business in a way that creates a deep connection with your customers is always going to invite new revenue and more revenue.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I'm just thinking, of some instances in my past dealing with angry customers. And, so for many years, I owned a national magazine for teenagers, and many of our clients were colleges. They would advertise in the magazine. That's how we made our revenue. And so a salesperson came to me crying. The client just chewed her out because we ran the wrong ad, right? So the guy wanted to talk to the CEO, and I'm like, all right. So I called him, and he starts just, ranting at me, very upset. And I let him finish. And I think I surprised him because I'm like, you are absolutely correct. I'm sorry. We totally made this mistake. What would you like us to do to make up for it? And he was like,
Make it
I think
right.
I gave him a mini heart attack because he was expecting me to fight back a little bit, And he goes, well, I want a free ad because you guys messed up. And I said, well, I can't do that. And he was like, what? I said, that's not enough. I mean, we messed up. I think I should give you three ads, And he goes, three? And that guy, I mean, I would see him at conferences. He would hug me. He became a lifelong client.
And
So
he probably referred business to you.
oh my, he became an ambassador.
Yeah,
Right?
he became a disciple.
Became a disciple. I don't know if he tattooed my company anywhere. That would be cool.
So you just described exactly what I'm talking about, in that even, sometimes your most connecting moments, your biggest opportunity with a client can be in that moment that you really screwed up,
Yeah.
because the way that you handle a situation like that tells people more about you as a person than when things are going right. Because what it did was it built an element of trust. So, that's the other thing that the code does, is it builds this really unbreakable trust. I had a similar situation with an editorial company that I was working on, and they fired my editor like a month before my proposal was due to Hay House. And I was really freaking out. And the owner got on the phone with me, and she's like, you know what? This is going to be okay. I am going to work and make this right no matter what. And she did. She backed up what she said. And so, in that moment, he's ranting because his needs were not met. Right. But in order to get him to that solution, you created that mindset shift for him. You created that break that he needed, that state change, in order to switch him over to the solution part. And when you did that and you actually exceeded his expectations, you had a raving fan.
Yeah.
And that raving fan, I'm guessing, brought you more business than just his business. In over time, he increased his own business, but he also gave you referrals.
Absolutely. And we were going to give him a free ad anyway. So I said, why not just make him feel like tremendous about it? I give him 3 ads, right? Because I know that he would continue to advertise forever. If I gave him 1 ad, he probably would take the ad and he'd be done. Right?
Well, I mean, 1 ad makes it even money, right?
Yep.
Don't we all love to double down? Or
Gotta
even
pour on the
down?
love. I want to pour on the love. Mary, I don't know if you know this, but I wrote a book called Make Love in the Workplace about 4 years ago. I don't know if I could use that title today in today's world, but back then, I wanted people to turn their head and say, like, what is this book about? But it was all about workplace love, like making people feel special, doing things that you were doing. And it's not just about the birthday cake, for the employee, just doing things that, sincerely let your team know that they are really appreciated, that they're heard, that they matter, that I do want them engaged. I do want them to make decisions without me. And so that's a lot of the book is about that. And so we are very much on the same page.
I love it. I was doing some training at one of the Verizon locations at one of their call centers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed by this call center. I mean, they had pool tables, and they had this giant break room, and they had shelves of just all kinds of goodies like Instapots and bicycles and TVs and things that people could win for incentives. Most miserable set of employees I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
They were so unhappy. And you know what? You could give them free TVs and free vacations all you wanted, but none of that was going to solve the problem because none of those employees were feeling heard.
Yeah.
And that's what they really needed. The power of connection trumps any other motivation.
Yep.
You know, I say, like, I have this amazing team of rock stars that work for me, and they're very empowered individuals. And like, sometimes management can be maybe a little intimidated by empowered employees, but the truth is that, and this goes for all people, not just staff, but you know, being empowered, being in that state of mind is the best place to create from, because everything you create from a place of empowerment is going to show up stronger, faster, better. It's going to be longer lasting, and it's going to have a greater impact. And that's really, really important. Versus if we're creating from a state of disempowerment, which is like virtually the opposite of empowerment. You know, we feel stuck. We don't really know what to do. But if we're forcing ourselves to create from that state of being, then everything we create is going to be stressful. It's not going to work out the way we envisioned it. We're going to encounter lots of obstacles and problems along the way. I mean, basically, it's going to be chaos. And so, you know, you've got a way here that allows employees to be naturally empowered. And I've created this team of rock stars, not because I've been the best in the leadership department over the years, but because I have given them a mission. And when you build your business on a mission and people care about it, they will do what they can to get behind you and support you.
Drop that mic, Mary. That's beautiful. I love it. we're definitely going to have some encore interviews with you. There's no doubt about it.
I would love to. I have only about a list of about 126 things I want to talk to you about.
Well, maybe I'll just have you on the next 126 episodes. Well, you know, you're making me remember. So years ago when I had the magazine, I realized I was doing performance reviews with the team. But what I realized is that nobody was reviewing me. And I'm like, okay, I'm letting everybody know, quote unquote, how they're doing, but no one's letting me know how I'm doing. And so I said, you guys have to fill out this 360 performance review on me. And I had 4 managers at the time. And I said, you guys are in charge of bringing me the results. And it was all anonymous, right? So you can put whatever you want. And the managers were like, Dave, you can fire us. Are you sure? And I'm like, is it going to be that bad? I said, I will fire you if you don't tell me the good, bad, and ugly. I want to know everything. So they brought it on. And there was some great stuff, but there was also some stuff that was like massive punch in the stomach. And I needed it. I call it the most enjoyable punch in the stomach I ever had. And one of the things, probably the major thing, was that while I had great intentions, I was not a good listener. Like, I at least pretended to be listening, but they could tell my mind was elsewhere. And I was like, and it was. When I really thought about it, my mind goes 1,000 miles per hour.
Sure, because you're CEO, you're in solution mode.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the next thing. What am I doing next? And so that completely, I think it changed me to the point where it annoyed them, you know, because like on Monday, I would ask, how was your weekend? And most people really don't want to know like the answer. They'd be like, oh, good. And then I would say, well, tell me about it. And they would, and I would listen and I would ask questions about their weekend. And, they created a monster because now it's really listening and asking questions about what they were saying back, but it was all good. It definitely changed my perspective about being present and how I communicate by, the way I listen or lack thereof. So it's so important. I think it's the most important thing when it comes to running a successful company is that communication, because you just said with that other company, they had all the fun things going on, right? But they were miserable because that basic need was not there, right? Mm-hmm. Versus need to feel respected, appreciated, listened to, that they matter. That's number one, right? So you're doing great work, Mary. Thank you so much. So if so a lot of Avanti listeners they're small to medium-sized business owners, and they're just building the culture. Maybe they have 5-10 employees. What if one of them is sitting down with you and saying, Mary, what do you suggest I do, during the course of the next year to really, get the flywheel of my team, my culture moving in the right direction? What would be some of those simple things that you would recommend?
Well, my mind also goes a million miles a minute. So what what I would I often say to people, bring me the biggest problem. Look
Mhm.
at, if you have the type of business where you have customers, which most of us do, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you are running a small fleet, whatever it is, what is the number one reason where people ask for the call to be escalated? So like in your case, it was the situation where the magazine article was misprinted, right? And so he wanted to talk to the owner. What is the number one reason why that happens in your own particular line of work? And then what I do is take that number one problem and say, if I can solve this problem where this call no longer has to be transferred to a supervisor, how much time will that give back to your company? Because escalated phone calls are really a huge money waster for companies. It really, really is. And also, as the owner or as the boss or whatever you call yourself, you don't always have the time to be putting out those fires. And so what if you could train the employee, empower the employee to be able to do it without the need for the transfer? So
Yeah.
once you have that, I'm giving out to your audience a free workbook that kind of tells you how to do this. But there's a section in it called What to Do When the Answer is No. And so what I would want you to do is empower your staff with what the solution to the problem is so that the call doesn't have to be transferred. Because
Yeah.
that's the problems we would need to eliminate. What's the number one reason the call has to be transferred? Eliminate that one. Then go to the next, to the next, to the next. Another thing I would just say, like in general, to small business owners, which I love, I mean, I've been a small business owner since I was 24, is the importance of documentation. It's so important to document everything that you do in a set of policies, procedures, work instructions, whatever you want to call them. Because I will tell you what, if you want to become a true entrepreneur, that means you're a serial entrepreneur. That means you're pursuing multiple passions. And I could never have written this book. I couldn't have taken the time to do the things in life that I'm doing now if I was spending 40 hours a week, 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week running the day-to-day of my business. So it runs a lot smoother when everything is documented, everything is followed in a seamless process, because that is what gives you as the owner your precious time back.
Mary, I wish I had 3 more hours for you. This has been fantastic. And I want to tell our listeners about your gift. You're giving them a mini communications code workbook. Is that correct?
Right. It's
And
got the 3 rules and the 3 steps in it.
Great. And so we'll have a link to that in our show notes. And Mary, if people do want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch with you and learn more?
Well, I would love to invite all the listeners to find me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's how you
Yep.
and I connected.
Yeah.
I'm going to be putting out some free webinars where I'm going to teach people how to use this code. And so I'm going to initially, not always, but initially I'm going to put them out for free. And if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, you'll see the post and you can sign up if you want. And aside from that, it's maryshores.com. SHORES.com is my website. I always love to say, if you've resonated with some of my stories today, you want to know more about my life or the strategy or the book, please go on Amazon or wherever you love to buy books. Check out Conscious Communications, read the description and a handful of reviews. You'll know right away if it's the book for you or not.
Excellent. Oh, and Mary, hold on 2 seconds. I'll be right back. I've never taken a pause like this before, but I had to do it. On my bookshelf, here's if you're watching this instead of listening to it, here is the book, Conscious Communications by Mary Shores. Very nice person right there. I encourage you to buy the book. Amazon, I imagine it's everywhere that books are can be bought. You can buy this. So congratulations, Mary. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. You're doing great work in the world. Really appreciate it. I'm very glad you were born. And I wish you massive continued success.
Thank you so much, Dave. My pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're ever in upstate New York, I know you think it's Pilgrim Land, but we would love to buy you a cup of coffee and learn more. You could sign my book for me, right? So
you probably have really great coffee there.
We really do. We really do. We have fantastic coffee here. It's kind of a competition. It's I think people have gotten competitive about having the best coffee in town.
Hey, I would love to live in a town where that was the biggest problem. Not that it is the biggest problem, but
the biggest opportunity.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of Italians here, and we're kind of snooty about our espresso, right? So
very good.
All right. Thanks, Mary. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Avanti listeners, thank you for your time. I hope you learned a lot. I know you did. Please reach out to Mary. She's wonderful. She's got great energy, and she totally can help you a lot. We do have to go. Please go to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com, where you could see the show notes and the links from this interview. And plus, I've got over 100 more episodes right there, AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Let me know if we can help you. We're starting Avanti Entrepreneur Network chapters all over the world. Let me know if you'd like to learn more about that. Make it a great day and stay awesome.
Thank you for listening. Head over to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com for show notes and more helpful advice from entrepreneurs like you. Continue to find your entrepreneurial rhythm at the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast.